Hey everyone, it's Zara, and I'm back to film my reading journal for the month of July. This was one of my best reading months so far this year. I read 11 books, 3,757 pages, with an average rating of 3.82, and my favorite book this month was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. Here's just a glance at when I started and finished books this month. I had a pretty good mix of Kindle books, physical books, and audiobooks this month. And I pulled a quote from Birding with Benefits. I consume romance novels for the same reason I watch birds, for the spark of joy, because I prefer to be happy when the world gives us so many reasons to be sad. I also completed all of my goals for the month. I did not read my book of the month for July, and I read 2 out of the 3 of my top TBR books. I did okay on my bingo board. I usually just pull challenges from the back of my reading journal and, toss them into a bingo board just to focus on different prompts that I might want to complete in the month. And then this month I also started Herkyed 3.0, which is the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, which I haven't participated in yet previously. So I'm excited to try it out this year. And it's a whole bunch of, different reading challenges that add up to one larger challenge. So I think there's 150 prompts total, but so far it's been a lot of fun, and there's a lot of different people that participate in it. So you can find a lot of videos on YouTube if you're interested in participating yourself. Then looking at my format tracker, again, I read a variety of books this month, so I have a variety of formats listed. I also read, this is one of my top reading months in terms of number of books, and then this was my most number of pages that I've read in a month so far this year. I filled out my bookshelf from JoJo's Pretty Paper Shop, and then I also filled out my 100 books tracker from Plan with Elise. I'm at 59 so far this year, and I believe I set a reading goal for 75 books in 2026. So I think I'll probably hit that around September if I keep reading, how I've been reading, which is very exciting. Then getting into the individual books, the first thing I read this month was No More Tears, The Dark Secrets of Johnson & Johnson. This is a nonfiction based on, kind of corruption and different scandals that have been a part of Johnson & Johnson over the years. It was a recommendation from one of my coworkers because I do work in the healthcare field, and I found this really interesting. I thought it was really well researched. I thought that it, obviously a number of really good points were brought up in the book, and it's quite interesting that Johnson & Johnson is a very huge company, and obviously it's had a number of scandals under its belt over the years, but it still has a very good reputation overall, despite some of the mishandling of some of these issues or things that it definitely should have handled differently. So it was just really interesting to read all about it. There were some things I knew, like the Tylenol murders, but there were a lot of things I didn't know, like Johnson & Johnson's involvement in the opioid crisis and, baby powder and vaginal mesh. So it was definitely worth a read if you're in healthcare, if you're interested in kind of like healthcare, drug company, nonfiction. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. Next, I read Pink Frontier, and this was a book that came up because of Herkyed, because of the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. There's a prompt or a series of prompts this year that are reading books with the colors in the title. So, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, pink being one of them. And so I was going through my want to read on Goodreads to try to find books that would fit certain prompts like that. And I had added this one to my TBR at some point, and I decided I would pick it up. It was on Kindle Unlimited, so I signed up for a free trial since my library and Libby didn't have it at all. It has a pretty low readership, So it also counted towards like hidden gems is one of the categories for Herkyed, where if you have a low readership or a low number of reviews, that would also count. So those are the 2 prompts I put it towards if you're interested. But this book takes place in 1986. You have Lace, who is living in Montana. She has, you know, just kind of this small life in Montana. She wants more for herself, and she crosses paths with 2 brothel workers who are passing through on their way back to Nevada, and they invite her to come along, and so she does. And it's all about, you know, kind of the friendships she makes within this brothel, and, you know, kind of her want for a different life, a want for freedom, and yeah, just kind of what she does along the way, you know, to get there, and what freedom really, you know, is. So I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. And it was a pretty fast-paced read, in my opinion. It moved pretty quickly. So 4 stars. Then I have the only one left, which was my favorite book of the month. I don't know. I'm trying to think of where I would rank it in terms of my other books that I've read by Riley Sager. And it's definitely up there, but I don't know if it's my favorite Riley Sager or if I would still put any of the others above it. I also haven't read every Riley Sager novel either, so it's just interesting to think about where I would place it. But it's definitely kind of your more quintessential thriller mystery in terms of writing style or the themes involved. So within this story, you have in 1929, you have Lenora and her family who are living at Hope's End, which is a big mansion on the, you know, cliffside. And in 1929, everyone dies at the house, or, you know, in the family. The other 3 family members die besides Lenora. And so there's tons of rumors circulating that she killed her family, but nothing is ever proven, nothing is ever, you know, brought forth, you know, evidence why she did it. And so, you know, life goes on, years pass, and she just kind of becomes this, you know, kind of like a legend, or, you know, everyone kind of whispers about her, everyone presumes that, you know, she did it, even though nothing was ever proven. And so now fast forward, it's 1983. Kit is a caretaker, and she's back to work after one of her patients died, and she had to take some time off while she was being investigated. And the caretaking agency places her at Hope's End, that she's going to take care of Lenora. And while she's caring for Lenora, basically Lenora, you know, says that she will tell Kit her story, you know, that she's finally ready to tell the truth about what happened, and tell everyone what went on. And Lenora is has suffered some strokes, and so you know, she's not able to talk, but she's able to type on a typewriter to tell her story. So I found it really interesting. You kind of have a creepy old house, you have these mysteries, you have, you know, obviously a lot of secrets that people are keeping and trying to piece it all together. I found it, you know, really interesting, and I definitely was excited to keep reading and knowing what would happen next. So 5 stars. Next, I have Birding with Benefits, and this one was a kind of total random read. I picked it up because I was at the library one day and they just had a display where it was on the display. My daughter this spring was very into birds, so anytime we would go for a walk, she would point out the birds. If she saw birds in our yard, she would point out the birds. And, you know, if you go by ducks, she loves ducks. She calls geese ducks too. And so I was just intrigued, you know, that it was a romance involving birds. It made me think of her. And I ended up actually really enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars. it starts out kind of with like a weird setup. You have Celeste and John, and Celeste has been recently divorced in the last couple of years. And in, divorcing her husband, she's decided like to really find herself, try new things, be open to new possibilities. And so she ends up talking to John's friend, and he's telling her that John needs a partner because he, is trying to make his ex-girlfriend jealous or something like that. And she thinks that it's kind of like a fake dating, like she's going to show up, pretend to be his girlfriend, make the girlfriend jealous, and then that's going to be the end of it. Well, it turns out it was really that John and his ex-girlfriend used to take place in this partners birding competition. So, you have teams of 2, and whoever spots the most number of birds in a period of like 6 or 8 weeks is the winner. And so he needs a partner for this birding competition, not fake dating. But by this point, she's already pretended to be his girlfriend before she figures out that it's a competition, not a date. And so in the spirit of trying new things and, being open to new possibilities, she decides that she's gonna do this competition with him, learn how to bird watch and help him win this competition. I really liked the characters. I thought it was a really fun story. I think if you're into bird watching and birding, you would also probably get something out of it because there were a lot of descriptions about birds. I believe the author is into bird watching as well, obviously. It's been adapted into a Hallmark movie, so it's just kind of a cutesy, heartwarming story. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to, I think it's going to become a series. I think I saw there's a second one coming out next year maybe, and so I look forward to reading more from this author because I just found this one really charming. So 4 stars. Then I have Tower of Dawn. This is a book in the Throne of Glass series. This is book number 6. And for Tower of Dawn, this one takes place in a totally different continent, a totally different area than the previous books. And so you meet a whole bunch of new characters, you meet a whole different, whole different places, whole different people, creatures, etc. And then it also takes place at the same time as Empire of Storms, which is the 5th book in the series. So a lot of people tandem read it, where they read, a couple chapters of one, then flip over to the other one and read them, kind of simultaneously. That sounded really daunting, so I did not do it, but I can see why people do it, and I could see the benefits of doing it that way. I overall gave it 5 stars. I'd say at points it got a little confusing just at the beginning as I was learning all of these new people and characters and everything, but it always wraps up in a really nice package. I feel like, even if I'm confused in the beginning, it all finds a way to wrap up nicely in the end. So I look forward to finishing the series. I look forward to reading book 7 soon, hopefully. I don't know if it'll be in August, but hopefully at least starting in August maybe. And, finishing the Throne of Glass series soon. Then I have Defiant. This is the final book in the Skyward series, which is a Brandon Sanderson series. I will say I don't think that this is like the most beloved of his series. I don't think it's the best of his works from what I can read from reviews, but I finished it. I will say book 1 in the series was really good. I really loved book 1, and then the rest of the books were kind of mid-tier for me. They were fine. And so I finished it just to finally get it off my list, to finally get done with it. But I'd say overall it just fell a little flat. There were certain times when you're building up to this big fight, and it's this fight that no one's been able to do up until now. No one's dared to take on, the fight, the gauntlet, and then 3 pages later, it's over. And so, just kind of one of those things where it feels like it's overhyped for the amount of, work that actually goes into winning the battle or, you know, fighting the fight. And so, I don't know, it just was a little bit of a letdown, or just kind of fell a little flat for me. I will also say science fiction is not my typical genre, not my favorite genre. I, you know, have a harder time getting into science fiction, especially like space science fiction. I think this one's like a space opera technically, and so that could also be, you know, on me. Maybe other people would find different enjoyment, but I usually try to read through reviews after I finish a book to see what other people are saying. And I feel like other people that are big, you know, Brandon Sanderson fans also had similar commentary, so I don't think I'm totally alone in that, but take it with a grain of salt. Then I have The Housemaid's Wedding. This is a novella in the Housemaid series by Frida McFadden, and this one is just kind of a short, sweet little novella. I gave it 3.25 stars. I enjoyed it. It didn't really add a ton to the story. It just kind of was the housemaid getting married. There's not a ton going on, but, you know, it was fine. It was a fast read. 3.25 stars. Then I had George and Frances Roll the Dice. This is in the Countess of Harley series. It's like a cozy mystery series, and that happens around the turn of the century, so it's like 1900 roughly. And this was just a cute novella. They're on their honeymoon. They go to the house that they're supposed to be staying at, and the person renting it out is running it like an illegal gambling ring, and then there's a dead body that shows up, and so, you know, they're trying to figure out this mystery and, you know, solve the case. So short, sweet, nothing any, you know, overly, it's not going to blow you away plot wise, you know, because it's pretty short and everything, but I still had a really good time reading it, and the audiobook I always think is done well. Then for my least favorite book of the month, I have Arsenic and Adobo. This was like a cozy mystery series. I picked it up because I wanted to read it for a number of Herkyed prompts, and I mean, it was fine. I finished it. I'm not going to read more in the series. I didn't enjoy it that much. But you have Lila, who is working in her family's restaurant. I think they're Filipino. And, you know, she has aspirations outside of the family restaurant. She wants to open like her own bakery, cafe situation. But she's working in her family restaurant. There's a restaurant critic in their small town, because their town is apparently big enough to have its own restaurant critic, a full-time restaurant critic that can just spend his time eating at the same restaurant for a month and writing consistently negative reviews. Not sure how that makes sense, but that is the premise or the setup. This restaurant reviewer, this restaurant critic, is also her ex-boyfriend, and when he's at their restaurant reviewing the restaurant, he ends up dying, like keeling over dead. And so obviously her family comes under investigation that maybe they poisoned him, and, you know, she's trying to solve the case so that her family can reopen the restaurant and, you know, their livelihood, since they can't survive with the restaurant being closed. It was fine. I thought that the mystery wasn't that challenging. I also thought that the characters were pretty flat. They were pretty one note. You know, people are just bad, you know, and you know, she talks about her recipes like multiple times, which I get it, it's a book about food, but they would spend a ton of time talking about a recipe or what they were ordering or what it tasted like, and then there would be like a dead body, and it would be like a page for the dead body, and that was it. And so they'd spend more time, you know, talking about the food than they would some of the crimes. Also, too, I feel like some of the characters' emotions, you know, like someone dies and then the people that should be broken up about it aren't. And so it just didn't feel very realistic. It didn't feel very, I don't know, it just felt off. So not my favorite cozy mystery. I won't continue in the series. Then I have another book that I don't know if if it's fiction or mystery, I don't really know where you land this. I put fiction, but it's 4 Aunties and a Wedding. It's book 2 in the like Dial A for Aunties series. In this one, you have Meddy. She's getting married. Her aunts and her mom are obviously involved with the wedding planning. They also hired a family of wedding planners similar to theirs to actually plan out the wedding, since they're all going to be in the wedding. And it just got a little bit outlandish. Like, something happens with the wedding vendors, and then there's this weird tension, and weird things happen. People make really weird decisions, and it just got a little bit too off the wall. It got very unbelievable. So I gave it 3 stars because, I mean, overall it was fine, but it just took it a little too far in the disbelief direction. I'm still going to read book 3 because I have it planned out for a couple of Herkiad prompts, but after that I don't know. I mean, right now there's only 3 books in the series, so if it continues in the series, I don't know if I'll read more. But this one just got a little bit outlandish for me, but it was fine. Then last but not least, I have The Housemaid is Watching. This is book 3 in the Housemaid series by Frida McFadden. I read The Housemaid a number of years ago. I really enjoyed it. Then I read book 2 and it was okay, kind of the same old, same old. And then book 3, it's different than the other 2, but I will say I didn't think that the story really needed these characters to tell it. I think you could have put any characters in the story and it would have probably worked out the same for 95% of the plot. And so I think that it was just, a ploy to sell books, is using the Housemaid label, in my opinion. I will say, I mean, it was enjoyable. I gave it 3.75 stars overall. You have 3 houses in a cul-de-sac. All of the neighbors have, kind of secrets they're hiding or weird vibes they're giving off. And so you have the neighbor across the street who has a child in school, and she's like a total helicopter parent, like over the top helicopter parent, and gives off some weird vibes. She's a widow. Then you have the dual incomes, no kids family like next door, that they're like the richest family on the block. They're very well off. They've got a maid. They are hiring a gardener, and they the wife seems to be flirting with our main character's husband, and so there's just some weird things going on there, and then they're hearing weird noises inside their house. So there's just kind of some things going on. They're trying to figure out how it all, or what's going on and what to believe. So like I said, overall I enjoyed it, but I also don't think that it needed to be under the Housemaid banner, if that makes sense. But that was everything I read this month in July. I'll be back again next month to talk about what I read in August. See you later.